All right, let's get into it. If you've ever started a worm composting bin, you're super excited, but then it ends up smelly or sludgy or just, well, not working, then this is for you. We're going to break down the super common mistakes that trip up almost everyone at the beginning and show you exactly how to get things back on track.
Ah, yes, it's the moment that makes your heart sink. You lift the lid and you see worms climbing up the walls, making a run for it. It feels like they're personally rejecting you and your bin. But what if I told you they're not being dramatic? They're just giving you some really, really important feedback.
And that is the absolute key to all of this. Seriously, you haven't failed, your bin is not a failure. In almost every single case, a tiny little adjustment is all that stands between you and a thriving, happy, easy to manage compost system. So let's get you there. That feeling when you open your bin and it smells terrible or it's turned into this dense, wet sludge, yeah, that is so discouraging. But here's the thing. These problems aren't random. They happen because of a few predictable patterns that, honestly, once you see them, are surprisingly simple to fix.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of the matter. Pretty much all the common worm bin problems boil down to two things: what you're feeding them and how wet their home is. If you can get these two things right, you've solved like 90% of all potential issues right there.
And here we go. This is it, the number one mistake. It causes more headaches than anything else. And you know what? It comes from a good place. You're excited, you've got all these kitchen scraps saved up, and you just want to give your new worms a massive feast. But that's not really how they operate, and it backfires big time.
So here's the why behind this, which is so important to understand. Worms don't just dive into a fresh piece of apple. First, tiny little microbes have to move in and start breaking it down, softening it up for them. So when you dump in a ton of food at once, it just sits there. It starts to rot and stink and heat up, creating all these problems before the worms can even get to it. This is such a brilliant way to think about it. Don't treat your bin like a garbage can that you just dump everything into. No, think of it like a slow cooker. It's a slow and steady biological process. You add a little bit at a time and you let it all break down gradually. So the fix is actually really simple. Just be patient. Especially when your bin is brand new, add just a small handful of food. Then, wait. Come back in a week. Is most of it gone? Awesome. Add a little more. If not, just wait longer. You gotta let the worms set the pace. All right, let's tackle that second huge issue. Your worm bin can very quickly become one of two things: either a soggy, airless swamp or a bone-dry desert, and neither is good. See, worms breathe through their skin, so they have to have moisture. But if it gets too wet, all the air pockets in the bedding disappear and they can't get oxygen. This right here is the perfect way to know if you've got it right. Just reach in and grab a handful of the bedding. Squeeze it. If water starts dripping out, it's way too wet. If it feels dusty and just falls apart, it's too dry. You want it to feel damp, kind of springy. It holds moisture, but it doesn't drip when you squeeze it. And look how easy the fix is. If your bin has turned into a swamp, your best friend is dry, fluffy bedding. Just tear up some cardboard or newspaper and mix it in to soak up all that extra liquid. If it's a desert, a few spritzes from a spray bottle will bring it right back. It's all about these simple little adjustments. Okay, so this brings us to a component that beginners often forget about, but it is absolutely critical for success. It's not the food, it's not even the worms, it's their home. It's all about the bedding. A lot of people get so focused on the food scraps that they just forget to add bedding. Things like shredded cardboard, newspaper, or coconut coir. But bedding is so much more than just filler. It provides structure, it creates airflow, it balances the wetness from the food, and it gives the worms a safe place to live and breed. So, here's the game-changing habit you need to build. Every single time you add a handful of wet kitchen scraps, you also add a handful of dry bedding right on top. Think of it like making a little lasagna. This one simple change will prevent your bin from ever becoming a dense, smelly mess. Okay, now let's back up for a second and talk about a few mistakes that can happen right from day one, during the initial setup. Getting these fundamentals right makes everything that follows so much easier. This one is huge. It seems like it would make sense to just go dig up some worms from your garden, right? But those worms are usually deep soil dwellers. They're not built for living in a shallow box full of rich food.
You need special composting worms, like red wigglers. They naturally live near the surface in decaying stuff, so a bin is like a paradise for them. You've got to hire the right specialist for the job.
Next up, where you actually put your bin. This matters way more than you might think. A bin that's sitting in direct sunlight can quickly turn into an oven and literally cook your worms. And one that's left in freezing temperatures will just shut down completely. Worms hate wild temperature swings. What do they love? Consistency. They thrive in the same kind of moderate temperatures that we do. So just think about places that have a stable climate. A corner of the garage, a laundry room, maybe a shady spot on the porch. That stability is really the key to keeping your bin productive. Now, while worms can eat a lot, they definitely have their limits. As you can see here, some foods just should not go in the bin. Meat, dairy, oily foods, they'll go rancid and make your bin smell awful. So stick to plant-based scraps. And even with the good stuff, you want variety. A giant pile of just orange peels, for example, can make the bin too acidic. Moderation is your friend.
And finally, let's tie this all together with what I think is the most important lesson of all. This isn't just about a checklist of fixes. It's about changing your whole perspective on what's going on inside that bin. No, really, just think about that for a second. What if that weird smell, or the worms on the wall, or that cloud of fruit flies? What if that wasn't a sign that you're a failure at this? What if it was just a message? This is the secret. A bad smell is just feedback, telling you the bin is too wet or has too much rotting food. Soggy bedding is feedback that you need to add more dry cardboard. Escaping worms are just feedback that conditions inside need a little tweak. They are literally communicating with you. And this little story just illustrates the difference perfectly. It's the same exact problem, a soggy bin. But the outcome is totally different, and it all comes down to their mindset. One person sees it as a total failure and gives up. The other sees it as a signal, takes a simple action, and ends up succeeding. And this is really the thought I want to leave you with. Success in worm composting isn't about having a perfect, problem-free bin right from the start. That's not realistic. It's about learning to be a detective, to look, to listen, to interpret the feedback your worms are giving you, and then to make those small, smart corrections. When you can do that, you're not just composting anymore. You're truly managing a living system.